Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to MCJ Report number 166. We are live right now across 3 platforms. That's right, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble. I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of our regular guests. And if you're tuning in for the first time, welcome to MCJ Report. I'm your host, Morgan C. Jonas. You are watching independent media. All right, guys, now before we get this show on the road, why don't you go ahead and share the broadcast? We need all the help we can get to get the word out there to make sure that we reach as many Australians and people around the world as we possibly can. All right, so what is on the agenda for this evening? We have a few topics to talk about, ladies and gentlemen. Topic number 1, preference deals for cash. That's right. Many of you may be familiar with this type of business that largely goes on behind closed doors. That's right. So we're going to have a little bit of a talk about it, more of an introduction video just to explain to you how it works here in Victoria and what's involved. Also, we see big protests erupting in China. That's right. Protests held by students in relation to the brutal lockdowns that are faced by many Chinese people living in cities across China's mainland. So very, very interesting. Takes a lot of courage in China to stand up due to the brutal nature of the Chinese Communist Party. So I've got some footage on that. Also, we have the former member for Dawson, George Christensen, joining us today to have a bit of a talk. Life after office. We're also going to have a bit of a chat about the new leadership in the Liberal Party and also George's next step in relation to his new media platform. And finally, Avi Yemini, that's right, Australia's own Avi, is out there in Davos exposing the weirdness of the World Economic Forum. So we've got some more videos courtesy of Rebel News, which I'm sure you'll find very, very intriguing. All right, folks, well, let's get this show on the road, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen. All righty, now. Okay, no, not starting there. All right, yeah, first of all, Telegram, great platform. I would say that it is my platform of choice. So if you don't have Telegram, you got to go and get it. It's an essential tool. Absolutely. We love it because, well, censorship, there's no censorship, that sort of thing. My handle is Morgan C. Jonas. So why don't you go ahead and give us a follow? Also, Freedom Party coming soon to Victoria. That's right. The party that I am heading up along with my team. We are building a tremendous movement. If you'd like to get on board with this new journey, which is destined to make some major changes in November, the sign-up form is in the description of this video. We'd love to have you on board. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is something that absolutely needs to be spoken about. Now, this will just be a little bit of an introduction because a lot of you are probably unfamiliar with what this is or how it's going on, where it's going on, and that type of thing. So it's going on in Victoria. So what do we have here? secret preference deals for cash are active in Victoria. Okay, so what do I mean by this? What do I mean? Well, many of you are familiar with preferences in terms of parties that negotiate where other parties will be located on their how to vote cards. Now, things work a little bit differently in Victoria, that's right. So for the upper house, every party must submit a grouped ticket to the VEC. Okay, the grouped ticket will contain the order of preferences that a party nominates for their own preference flow. Okay, so for example, Liberal may have, Darren Hinch is number 2, and down the chain it goes. So what are we actually getting at here when we talk about secret preference deals for cash? Well, it's been publicized in the media widely, so you can go and look it up. But these are deals that take place behind closed doors where effectively money is exchanged for preference arrangements. It's based highly on mathematics, and usually these deals are comprised of what is referred to as micro parties across different regions in order to mathematically formulate the right combination for getting certain members elected into the upper house in Victoria. Okay, so what it looks like is essentially handing over several thousands of dollars to what you might refer to as a preference broker. The preference broker then speaks to a range of minor parties. It doesn't matter if they're far left, far right, in the center, conservative, progressive, it doesn't matter. And as a result of that payment, the likelihood of a certain candidate getting elected is dramatically increased. We've seen candidates using this model in Victoria and in other states in Australia. They were able to get elected on a very, very small percentage of the vote. These types of deals have come under much criticism in the past by various figures. Some MPs have been outspoken about it, claiming that it is a perversion of democracy and that votes should not be for sale. Others argue that, well, without these types of deals, the minor parties would never stand a chance. So we really need to knuckle down on this, ladies and gentlemen. I do not think this is an ethical way of running a campaign, mostly due to this surreptitious nature of the deal itself. The deals are done behind closed doors, unbeknownst to the voters. So what we've seen in the past are voters choosing a certain party that they would like to get elected, say above the line on the upper house ticket, not actually realizing that their preferences, should they not get their first pick, will be funneled down the chain, potentially to a party or a candidate that they would never vote for in the first place. Just imagine that. Imagine you're voting for a pro-freedom party, only to find out later that due to the preference flow, your flow went to somebody who is highly in favor of lockdowns. You'd be pretty devastated. So this is just a little introduction. I want to just put this into your mind to let you know that me and my team, we will not be dealing in any type of exchanges in terms of money for preferences. What we need in this country is ethical, transparent dealings between like-minded parties, and that is exactly what I will demonstrate here with our campaign run. And I think a lot of parties are going to demonstrate that as well. So as you see here, seats in the Victorian upper house are up for sale. This is just a simple matter of fact. So ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to make you aware that this is going on, and you can expect to see further coverage from myself regarding the deal of preferences for money as the campaign rolls along. There's also something important to point out, very, very important, and that is that the state election here in Victoria, it runs a little bit differently from the federal election that we just experienced. Let me tell you why. In the federal election, in the Senate, which is also referred to the upper house, in theory, you can number a single box above the line as number 1, and that would be considered a valid vote, okay? Now, the downside to that is that if you were not to get your number 1 selection, your vote would be dead in the water. It doesn't quite work like that in Victoria. Let me tell you what I mean. When voting in the upper house in Victoria, if you were to do the same thing and only number a single box above the line, your vote would flow down through the preferences of the nomination submitted to the VEC by the party of which you voted for. Okay, so in other words, in Victoria, in the upper house ballot ticket, if you vote a number 1 above the line and that party does not get in, your vote could end up going down the chain, potentially into the hands of a party that you would never vote for in a million years. This is a major, major problem, and it's one that we're going to talk about more on MCJ Report, so make sure that you stay tuned. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is actually remarkable what is happening in China right now. What we are seeing are large student-led protests in opposition to the Chinese Communist Party's lockdown regime. Okay, so if you've been watching any of the alternative news, and NTD, by the way, is a great source for news on what's going on in China, especially in relation to the brutal lockdowns, what we have seen, large amounts of students protesting the government. Now, why is this significant? Well, first of all, I think it's significant anywhere in the world where large amounts of people stand up to lockdowns, but particularly in China because the stakes are so high. China is governed by the Chinese Communist Party and ruled with an iron fist. Dissent is not tolerated at all, as demonstrated in the 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre, where thousands of peaceful pro-democratic student protesters were gunned down by the military with live ammunition. It was one of the most disgraceful government-led massacres in our history. That's right. So for these students to be standing up right now, knowing what they know, knowing they could potentially be faced with brutal backlash from the government, is something that is truly special and courageous and something to be admired in terms of their strength, okay? But B, they are really subjecting themselves to tremendous risk. That's right. But most of all, C, it really demonstrates that things have become so incredibly unbearable and brutal in China that these young people are willing to risk it all for the sake of standing up. And it really takes a lot to bring large amounts of people out onto the streets in China because they know the consequences. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you some footage from China. Take a look.
Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Demonstrations broke out in China's Tianjin University Thursday night. Students were heard shouting "down with bureaucracy" amid demands that they be allowed to leave the shuttered campus and go home. Dozens of police officers were sent to the site to stamp out the protest. And this on the eve of one of the most sensitive anniversaries in China. Check it out.
Following several successful protests in Beijing universities, another erupted in Tianjin University Thursday night. The city's strict zero COVID-19 rules mean students have been stuck on campus and blocked from going home. Thursday, hundreds of them assembled on campus to protest, yelling, "Let me go home." The student protest marked a decision to take the mass appeal route, rather than addressing concerns more quietly through representatives and school leaders. More worrisome for Chinese officials, the latest protest featured two new slogans, "Down with formalism" and "Down with bureaucracy." What's meant by formalism? It's a rare term in Western nations, but a relatively common one in authoritarian countries. Chinese affairs analyst Tang Jingwan explains that the so-called formalism refers to when situations or events are scripted or prearranged for a certain outcome. Students have complained about the months-long lockdown on campus, especially because no new infection cases have been found in the area. They also say life on campus has gotten hard, with skyrocketing prices for essential goods and depression rates rising. Local authorities ordered all Tianjin students to shelter in place for 3 days starting Friday and to wait for further instructions. Students were told they will be confined to campus until the end of the year. Residents are prohibited from moving their vehicles. Grocery stores, pharmacies, and food markets are the only shops that remain open. As for the university protests, posters declare the students' demands. 1, that they will be allowed to go home. And 2, that those who participated in the protests not be held accountable or punished. They reportedly plan to march again on Saturday to keep up the pressure on school authorities.
2 other major cities, Beijing and Shanghai, also saw multiple protests in recent weeks. They broke out both in residential areas and on college campuses. The demonstrations attracted widespread attention, especially because the anniversary of one of China's most sensitive incidents is around the corner, the June 4th Tiananmen Square massacre. It marked the final day of the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. Military troops opened fire on demonstrators, who were largely unarmed college students asking for democracy and freedom. Thousands were killed.
All right, well, I think I can speak on behalf of all freedom-loving people around the world when I say kudos to the students over in China. Keep standing up against the government. Your bravery is definitely very, very inspiring. Alrighty, now moving ahead here. Alright, so folks, courtesy of Rebel News, that's right, and Avi, Australia's very own Avi, over in Davos, exposing the utter weirdness of the World Economic Forum, the people involved, and the lack of willingness of certain powerful people connected with the World Economic Forum to answer really simple questions. I've got a couple of clips here from Rebel News. Maybe you haven't seen them already, so we're going to feature a fairly strange patch that the police have been wearing, a special World Economic Forum police patch, and no one really seems to know what it is. Some people think it's a souvenir, some people think it's just for decoration. The mainstream media seems to think it's misinformation. So the footage is here. I'm going to show you so you can make up your own mind. And also a very very interesting interaction between Avi and a guard who was guarding the World Health Organization, who seemed to be under the impression that reporting negatively on the WHO may constitute some sort of breach or something like that. Anyway, I'm going to show you now the footage. So this is really interesting. Take a look.
Talk to me about what I lied about.
No, I can't talk about this. I just tell you the truth.
Well, what's the truth? I would love to correct the record.
You know, a family member, we can give you information about that.
But what was the lie? Tell me the lie so I can correct the record.
It was just a control.
Avi Yemini with Savannah Hernandez here in Davos for
Davos. We're in Davos, Switzerland.
But today's video, what we're doing is we're here to set the record straight about the entire story, but also because today there have been some interesting fact checks from the mainstream media. And we have the lowdown. Savannah, tell me, let's start from the beginning. What happened 2 days ago?
So I was told that, or I saw on Twitter that Jack Pusovic was being detained by the Swiss police, and when I walked up, I saw the scene. He was being surrounded, and I went up and I asked them myself, because as a journalist, I wanted to get the facts directly from the police. I would like to know why this journalist is being detained on public property.
What's detained? Can you explain
How come he's being surrounded right now? Is he allowed to leave the area?
We're just making a normal police control.
I spoke to Pusovic as well, and he was pointing out the patches on the police's arm that said World Economic Forum Police, and then that entire story, many people started questioning what that meant.
So today when we were driving in, as we do every day here, we had our 360 dash cam going, basically to record the entire trip. And we actually captured on camera speaking to the police, asking him about that patch. Can I ask you something? You know the police in there that have the WEF patch?
Yeah.
Are they actually WEF police, or is it just that they're police that are wearing a patch?
No, it's just police.
So what's that patch? Just for fun?
Yeah, to be honest, yeah. I have that patch as well.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Why are you not wearing it?
Because I don't have to.
So whoever wants to wear it can wear it?
Sorry?
So whoever wants to wear it can wear it?
Not really. There are some who have to.
Oh, you have to. It's so weird, because the media today said that it's not real, that it's just...
Yeah, I know, I've seen it, yeah, but yeah.
Why are they playing dress-ups? I want to know that.
Sorry?
Why are they playing dress-ups for the WEF?
Yeah, from police tactics, and so I'm not allowed to tell you.
Oh, you're not.
Okay?
Okay.
Miss Hernandez.
Yeah.
Here you go.
Coron.
If you don't wear your WEF patch, can I have it?
No, I had to buy it.
Oh,
You have to buy
what?
it.
Klaus Schwab didn't pay for it? You had to pay for it?
Yeah. What? Like a...
From their pay?
It's like a uniform.
You know, it's not an officially uniform for us.
Oh, okay.
So,
But some people... Alright, you're so
it's
confusing.
like a souvenir.
Oh,
Ah.
it's like annually.
But you said
like
some of
every
them
year.
have to wear it, and they have to wear a souvenir, and they have to pay for it.
No, we had.
You had to pay for it.
Yeah, I don't...
Because Klaus Schwab doesn't have enough money. I will talk to him for you.
Yeah, talk to him. Thank you.
See you, brother.
Bye-bye.
My experience since being here, police have been super friendly, super nice. Do you have a message for Australia?
For Australia, well, the beautiful country, and enjoy Davos.
Keep this place safe. I think there's many criminals around.
The police so far have been very friendly. I actually, except for this one, interaction I had earlier today, I was walking past and this plainclothes police officer said, "Savannah, you're famous here in Switzerland." And I said, "Oh, how do you know me?" And he said, "You lied. You said somebody was arrested. Please let me correct the record. What did I lie about?"
I don't say you lie. I said you say you're famous, and I say hello.
I never said anybody was arrested. I said that they were detained, which is completely different. Can you talk to me about what I lied about so I can correct the rest of it?
I just tell you.
And that's the issue, is that these fact checks don't even bring in the alternate angle of why Americans, or why the world especially, was so upset about these patches initially. That's important as well, because when you don't have that context, it just makes everyone look crazy, like we're just creating conspiracy theory out of nothing for no reason. But there is context, there's both sides, there's multiple angles to every single story, including this one.
And that's what we're here to do. We're here to present the entire stories.
Definitely. Go to wefreports.com to keep up with all of our reporting, because again, so much is happening, Avi. And you know, there's 6 of us here, and we've covered as much as we could, including this. So thank you guys so much for watching.
Stop. Vous êtes la même équipe.
Yeah. Is everything okay?
Now you stop to film.
Why?
Because you have not authorization.
No,
Not film.
One second.
Not film.
Why no? Why do you need authorization here?
Yes, it's WHO.
Why can't you film the World Health Organization?
Because it's official if you said
Yeah.
WHO is bad.
Yeah.
WHO, when you film, it's okay. WHO is said, yeah, okay, you film.
If I say it's bad,
Perhaps, I don't
yeah,
know.
maybe I do. So what does it matter?
We can film if we like the World Health Organization, but if we're reporting badly on the World Health Organization, we can't film.
So they don't seem too happy with filming the World Health Organization. How you doing, mate? Bonjour.
Vous êtes de...
Do you speak English?
Très peu. Vous
You have
êtes de
somebody-
la profession, vous êtes journaliste? Vous êtes... alors, on va contacter le centre de contrôle pour voir si vous avez une autorisation de...
Bring someone in English. I don't speak French, mate.
Il s'agit du journaliste Yemini, Y-E-M-I-N-I, Avi, de son prénom A-V-I.
My name sounds good in French too. This is certainly an image of health. He's got his masks tied to his security belt. It's both secure.
Please, just 1 moment. Okay? Thank you.
What?
1 moment.
Yes.
It's possible to
Film?
do your interview, okay?
Mhm.
Just for the image.
The image, yeah.
Yes, not inside the building.
We're not going
Okay?
inside. That's okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just around.
Thank
Okay?
you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
There you go. So that's the thing you got to learn when you stand up for yourself against tyranny, and that's what it is. That's a taste of tyranny. That's what it looks like when authoritarian states and rulers try to shut you down. If you stand up for yourself, 9 out of 10 times, at least while you're in a democracy, you will win. Let that be a lesson. Avi Yemini for Rebel News in Geneva, Switzerland.
All right, so a big thank you to Avi and the team from Rebel News. Now, guys, if you'd like to stay up to date on the reporting going on in Davos in the World Economic Forum, head over to rebelnews.com. They're doing a tremendous job over there. Independent journalists from all around the world under the banner of Rebel traveling over there, telling the other side of the story, otherwise left untouched by the mainstream media. They're doing a great job, so definitely go to their website and check it out. All right, moving along, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is somebody that you know. That's right, former MP of nearly 12 years, George Christensen. George has been outspoken, speaking up against lockdown, speaking up for us. He's now out of Parliament, planning his next move. He's on the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, I present to you George Christensen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very happy here to be joined by George Christensen, former MP, that's right, of, was it 12 years you were in there, George?
Yeah, mate, almost 12, 11 and a half, close to 12.
Excellent stuff. So that is a pretty significant chunk of your life. So let us know, how are you feeling? Does it seem like a dream? What's going through your mind right now?
Well, look, I guess that one thing that I looked at was the election result, and I've got a combination of mixed feelings over that. I told you so as being one of them. With the coalition kept on lurching to the left, kept on going woke, didn't do anything about the mandates, that this would be the result, and it was the result. The other thing that I guess that I get a feeling of is sadness that the pro-freedom movement didn't do better than what the end result was. Now, having said that, I guess that I had those thoughts of sadness, and now looking at the results, it seems that there are going to be some pro-freedom senators elected. Certainly, we know Pauline Hanson is or is going to be elected. I mean, that looks like the results at the moment, and there seems to be prospects in New South Wales, Victoria, WA, South Australia, and I'm hearing still maybe even Tasmania. So that's great.
Definitely. And I hear what you're saying about the Liberal Party and their apparent shift to capitulating to certain notions that might be at odds with freedom. Now, why do you think they didn't make a stronger move in relation to standing against things like mandates?
Well, they should have made the stronger move because if you have a look at the objectives or the philosophy, the value statement that each of the coalition parties has, whether it be Liberal or National, they talk about things like freedom of choice, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom to assemble, small government, limited government, government that doesn't intrude into our lives. So these are supposedly the principles and the beliefs of these two political parties. But when it come to COVID, it was anything but. And of course, the easy response, the response that we always get was, oh, well, this was the state government's doing, the Premier's doing. And sure, that's who was directly pulling the trigger, I guess. But if you actually have a look, I mean, two things. One, that there was the ability of the federal government to step in and stop some of this nonsense. They didn't do that, so that's a sin of omission. But I'll tell you what, there was also the sin of commission. The federal government has something called the Australian Immunisation Register. I know that you're familiar with it, Morgan, and a lot of your viewers might be. The Australian Immunisation Register has been about for a long, long while. But guess what? It was voluntary to report immunisations on that register up until late 2020. The federal government changed it. Now, why did they change it? And I could speculate here, but let's just stick to the facts. It just so happened that every state government was relying on that data to underpin their vaccine passport system, their vaccine mandate systems. So it's quite easy to speculate why that was made mandatory. If it wasn't mandatory, the whole vaccine discrimination apparatus would have fallen apart.
Interesting.
Actually, it wouldn't have just fallen apart, mate. It wouldn't have even happened in the first place.
Was that a executive decision, so to speak, or was there an actual amendment passed in Parliament regarding that?
There was an amendment passed in Parliament, and I rang the alarm bell on it. I remember sitting at the meeting, because we used to gather every sitting week when we were down there and have a government party room meeting where we get to say our problems and issues that we think need addressing to the Prime Minister and other ministers, and mostly they were never listened to. But anyway, what also happened was the ministers got up and presented legislation to the party room, and it was nearly always just rubber stamped, even though that's supposed to be the outlet where, internally debates happen around proposed legislation. Well, they got up and proposed this amendment that would change the register from one of voluntary to compulsory. And I put my hand up gingerly at first when they said any questions or issues. And I said, yes, well, look, Minister, I said, I'm sorry to be the bugbear here, but there's a lot of people running around at the moment saying that they're going to make these mRNA vaccines mandatory. And we've heard from the Prime Minister that that's not happening. So why would we then be making registrations to this register mandatory? Has this got something to do with COVID? I don't understand why we're doing this. And I was assured that not only was fear about that tinfoil hat stuff, but that this data would remain between doctors or medical providers and their patients. Now, I wasn't just told that. The whole of the Liberal and National Party backbench was told that at that meeting. And quite frankly, we were lied to, because this data was given to state governments. I understand from media reports I saw that the New South Wales government accessed it. I also note that they can be a bit cute with their language. Sure, it remained the property or remained between doctors or medical providers and their patients. But what ended up happening, because patients have access to it, the state governments then said, well, you have to enable us access to this data, or else we are going to stop you from entering certain places, or we're going to sack you from certain jobs. It enabled the whole thing. So that was the Morrison government. The Morrison government was the enabler of the whole vaccine passport system.
I see. Yeah, it was interesting to watch it unfold over the past 2 years, with Scott Morrison making very bold statements to the public in relation to Australia supposedly not having a mandatory vaccination program, and then sitting by in silence whilst the states rolled out mandatory vaccination programs. Now, I believe it was actually a bill introduced to the lower house by Craig Kelly that you supported, George. From what I recall, it was the No Vaccine Passport Bill or something to that effect. Now,
the No Domestic
why was
Vaccine
that
Passports
not
Bill
supported by the coalition?
Mate, well, I'm happy to say that there was one other member of the coalition who
Please.
supported it, and that was the member for White Bay, Lou O'Brien, and he hardly gets any kudos about that, but he should get kudos about it. He crossed the floor, and he remains in the Liberal National Party as a member of the Parliamentary National Party in Canberra. So, but yes, mate, it was a very lonely place. There was three of us on one side, and all the collective uni party on the other side, all the members of the Liberal Party, National Party and Labor Party, and I'm not even sure there probably were some Greens and Teal independents over there too. Mate, they all voted against doing that bill, against ending it. We voted for it, and that's where I just have to leave it, because it was just a shame that was a potential for something to happen federally to stop these mandates. They can say, oh, well, this is not a government bill, we don't support non-government bills. Well, yes, but if you believed in it, you would have picked up Craig Kelly's work, which I read. It was actually a good bill. It would have been constitutional. It would have been sound. And they could have crafted one themselves to end it, but they didn't. And I think this is December 2020 to move to do something, because I saw it coming. You had people like the Queensland Education Minister saying she was considering not allowing non-vaccinated kids to return to school, and Alan Joyce talking about potentially domestic flights on Qantas not being allowed to carry unvaccinated people. Now, they didn't go that far, but I saw it coming, and I told them to do something. And when I say they, I mean Prime Minister Scott Morrison, or the then Prime Minister Scott Morrison, and then Health Minister Greg Hunt.
Greg Hunt, that's right.
Yes.
Seems to me to be acting more like a salesman for Big Pharma than anything else. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that it wasn't supported because it was not a government bill. So how about a bit of consideration for the general public? Millions of people are displaced, subjected to undue coercion and pressure and stress and financial loss. Surely that should be the consideration of the majority of members in the lower house, not whether or not it's a, quote, government bill. So what I'm getting at, George, is there must have been members of the lower house sitting across the other side of the floor who 100% agree with you, and they voted against their conscience. Now, I'm not asking you to name any names. I wouldn't ask you to do that. But is that a fact?
That's
where
true.
there are people sitting on the other side who knew what they were doing was wrong?
Yes. Yep. There definitely was. And I know because some of those people spoke to me.
How do they sleep at night?
That's a, well, man, I don't know. I can't put myself, well, I can, because sometimes I did that over my career actually too. And it eats away inside you. It eats away inside you until something bursts and you just break out. So, hopefully some of those people are going to, break out and do their own thing in the future, be a bit more rebellious. We have a problem with our uber-disciplined party system here in Australia. It stifles representation. It really, really does. It stifles individuality. I said this in my final speech to the Parliament, that we need to be very careful that we steer the direction back in favour of representation rather than just strict party discipline, or otherwise, I said, Parliament House is going to become a sheltered workshop for people who can't think for themselves. And I'm going to say it's probably already that. It probably is already that. Mate, I'm going to tell you something that'll make your blood boil, and I know a few of your listeners' blood boil. In fact, I recall it was the new leader of the National Party, David Littleproud, who's just been elected today, who was scolding me privately in a meeting for saying stuff about vaccine mandates and telling me to think. Actually, it was scolding me for not supporting government legislation or been across the floor on this matter, and think of how this is going to impact on your fellow parliamentary colleagues here. Think carefully because their jobs are at risk. And my response was, I'm thinking very carefully about people's jobs, people who have lost their jobs to vaccine mandates. That's what I'm worried about. So their worry was all about themselves.
So what you're saying, I don't want to take it out of context. So, if I am, pull me up on it. But the remarks you've just referenced there by David Littleproud kind of sounds like he's putting the jobs of his mates above the potential interests of 26 million Australians, something like that. No big deal, right?
Yeah, I was completely offended by it. I mean, to say that, oh, you're not running again, don't worry about, you don't have to worry about your job. There's other people in the room that have to worry about their job. Well, what about the hundreds and hundreds of people in my electorate whose jobs were lost over this? They were the people that I was worried about, and all of the other people around the country. It's absolutely disgraceful for anyone to look at someone else and say, oh, think about another politician's job, when what I was doing was actually standing up for the jobs of people who quite unfairly and unethically had just been thrown to the curb because of this medical tyranny.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you for doing it. We wish that some others in Parliament would grow a backbone and actually show some courage and speak up in accordance with their conscience rather than their own self-interest, which I think is probably a whole other discussion in itself. Now, you touched on before the notion of woke agendas infiltrating the Liberal Party. Now we've got Peter Dutton as the new leader of the opposition. Do you think that he will take measures to bit by bit rid woke agendas from the Liberal Party? What do you think?
Well, if anyone can do it, it'd be Peter Dutton. So I think that, yes, we will see a lot of that rubbish nipped in the bud. But the problem is bigger than the leadership, I've got to say. There is this sort of faction. It's a cancer within the Liberal Party that really wants to make it Labor light. And, I just can't believe that, sadly that cancer's also spread to the National Party that's resulted in Barnaby Joyce's ousting today. This idea that we've got to move to the left on a range of different issues because that's where the Australian public are going. Well, if you're going to be a pale imitation of the other side in politics, mate, they'll just go for the real thing, That's why people don't go for Pepsi, they go for Coke. They want the real thing. They don't want a pale imitation of it. Hopefully you don't get sued by Pepsi or Coke for me saying that.
No, that's quite all right. Now, I've seen some of my audience asking questions about Peter Dutton, because on one side we see he's very strong with things like national security and defence, but being a minister, I understand that his hands are somewhat tied in relation to other topics. But do you know where he stands on mandates and lockdowns and that type of stuff?
Mate, I look, have I had a conversation with Peter Dutton to say what's your position on this? No, I haven't. I, though, would instinctively think that he would have been one of those people that was extremely sympathetic, but because of the whole idea of cabinet solidarity and party discipline, probably chose to say nothing. I think that, look, I stand to be corrected here, but he might have made some remarks about it, particularly directed at the Queensland government, at least on some of the measures. So I'll have to go back and check the files. But look, I think that if Peter Dutton was Prime Minister while all that was going on, I'm pretty sure we would have seen a very, very different kettle of fish.
Right. So I guess another question is, now that he is leader of the opposition, is he more free to speak out on a broader range of topics, including lockdowns and mandates? And can he?
Absolutely. But you got to remember there's one thing that seems to terrify a lot of politicians, and that is the Canberra Press Gallery. They turn the whole thing into a bit of a circus where it becomes all about personalities rather than about issues. And of course, cancel culture rules the day. So, if you say something that's not acceptable within the bounds of what the press gallery deems acceptable, then there's a pile-on. That they start a pile-on. Someone's going to do something about this person. So we've got that problem as well, Morgan, and that's where people like you and others come to the fore, because you're providing an alternative to that narrative that the corporate media, the legacy fake news media, puts forward, and more power to your arm, because we need more alternative media. It's actually why I've decided to start a daily newsletter, and I've got other ideas going on myself, and hopefully there's more people that come into this space, because we need a chorus of voices that present an alternative narrative to the mainstream media. I'm not saying, it almost sounds bizarre to say alternative narrative, but what I mean is this. The news stories of the day dominate the public mindset. And who crafts those news stories? There might be 20 different issues out there, but only half a dozen make the cut. And so there's a boardroom or an editorial room where there are people determining what the issues for the nation are going to be and leaving off the other dozen or so. There was one issue during the federal election that had about 10 to 15%, maybe more, 20% maybe, of the population really ticked off. And that was vaccine mandates, vaccine passports, and vaccine discrimination. We heard next to nothing from the mainstream media about that. Now, I don't know there's been another federal election come by where there was one single issue dominating this large section, a bit, not a majority, but a large section of the public that got next to no airtime. This just shows you how the mainstream media can twist things, can be biased, and can steer the direction in a way they want rather than in a direction they don't want.
It's a pretty scary thought, isn't it, that he or they who control the dissemination of information are able to dictate public opinion and what the common man and woman support, what they don't support. But it's so selectively chosen that it has highlighted the absolute need in Australia for alternative media. And we have our own challenges, of course, with the, I suppose, mainstream media, social media, big tech platforms, in terms of our distribution is often limited due to shadow banning, or an account can be taken down for speaking about a topic that is considered a no-go zone. But nonetheless, we have a huge space in our market for more voices from an alternative platform. So I think it's great what you're doing. Now, what is the name of your new media platform? What's it about, and where can people find it?
Mate, it's a newsletter. It's going daily as of the 6th of June. It's nationfirst.substack.com. Nation First is the name of the newsletter. This is a newsletter dedicated to freedom, dedicated to national sovereignty, and dedicated to countering the threats to freedom and national sovereignty. So, if you want to sign up, you just go to nationfirst.substack.com. And you can do that there. It's to do a shameless plug, mate. It's fairly cheap, $9.90 a month or $99 a year. And what I'm intending on doing is using revenue that might be generated from this to grow a team, so that there are other people rather than just myself that can write for this newsletter. And also, we're going to branch out to do more on YouTube and Rumble, and also, I've got in the offing a website called eurekafreepress.com. It's actually live at the moment, but there's next to nothing up there. But what I'm trying to do is to turn this into the conservative news aggregator for Australia. And that's going to also take a bit of resources and a bit of finance build up before we hit the go button on that. So a few different ideas. And I'll hopefully be reaching out to people like yourself to connect with as part of these projects. I think ultimately, just like we had a whole heap of freedom parties that probably didn't work together too well at the federal election, we've got a whole heap of pro-freedom and conservative media outlets now. And I would love to try and find a way that we can all work together to not only lift all boats, but also lift freedom, because that's what needs to be lifted in Australia at the moment.
Absolutely. And the need is there, George. And I think the challenge is getting our voices from an alternative platform out to the masses, the mainstream media, of course, dominating the space of information. And something needs to be done about it. So I'm really glad that you're joining this battle now. Ladies and gentlemen, the link to this new media platform, Nation First, headed up by George, is in the description of this video. So I encourage you to check it out at home. We need as many voices out there as possible. Okay, now, George, before we wrap this up, I might throw a bit of a curveball at you. Here in Victoria, you know who our Premier is. Would you like to give a message to Daniel Andrews?
Mate, my message is very simple. My message to Daniel Andrews is this: resign.
That's a good message. And I may add to it, resign and let the criminal proceedings begin. Anyway, George. George, I appreciate you. I'd very much like to collaborate on some initiatives with you in the future. Thanks for spending time with us today.
Thank you, Morgan, and I hope you keep on powering on with what you're doing. It's great work.
Thank you. Thanks, mate. I'll catch you next time. All right, George, thank you very much for joining us on MCJ Report. We're looking forward to having you back on the show really soon. Now, folks, if you'd like to stay up to date and learn more about the new media platform by George, created by George, the link is in the description of this video. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that just about wraps it up for tonight's episode. Now, if you'd like to get involved in Freedom Party and join our journey for getting rid of Daniel Andrews in November, then you can sign up via the sign-up form that is in the description of this video. Once again, thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next episode of MCJ Report.